This was President Trump's visit today to the largest retirement village in America. It's a retirement village. So that means it's all older Americans in this crowd. Let the record show, let history note that this is what the President of the United States did today, on the day the country had more new COVID infections than any other day thus far in the entire pandemic. That's how he gathered his fellow Americans together today. So close. Get closer. Get close. Anybody wearing a mask in that picture? See one, maybe? Here was Bloomberg News this afternoon. President Donald Trump is, quote, forging ahead with a breakneck pace of rallies in battleground states during the final days of his re-election campaign, defying public health guidelines as a wave of new coronavirus cases smacks the United States. Trump will stage 6 rallies over the next 3 days in Florida, Ohio, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and New Hampshire as he rushes to make up ground on Democratic nominee Joe Biden. The president is expected to draw thousands of unmasked supporters to each of these rallies, running the risk of seeding new outbreaks as virus cases hit levels since the summer. And now we know surpassing even the worst of the summer. That's Bloomberg News today. Here's USA Today tonight. Quote, as President Donald Trump jetted across the country holding campaign rallies during the past 2 months, he didn't just defy state orders and federal health guidelines, he left a trail of coronavirus outbreaks in his wake. When U.S. cases started climbing in mid-September, Trump did not alter his campaign schedule, but continued holding an average of 4 rallies a week. He stopped first in Minnesota, where Blue Earth County's coronavirus growth rate was 15% before Trump's rally. It grew to 25% afterwards. 3 days later, the president was in Lackawanna County, Pennsylvania, where the coronavirus growth rate jumped from less than 3% before his visit to more than 7% after his visit. Even in states where cases were already rising, the spikes in at least 4 counties that hosted Trump rallies far surpassed their state's overall growth rates. In 2 of those counties, the growth rate was more than double after the president's visit. In Beltrami County, Minnesota, where the president held his rally in Bemidji, the case count there swelled by 35% compared to the state's 14%. In Marathon County, Wisconsin, the case count surged by 67% after the president's visit, even though the overall growth rate in the state was less than 30% at the time. You know, it is one thing to be mad at this president for presiding over the worst botched COVID response of any nation on earth, and 220,000 of our fellow Americans paying with their lives because of it, right? It's one thing to be mad about him botching the response in terms of governance, including the news just tonight that it turns out he disbanded the Federal Vaccine Safety Office last year. Yeah, we'll never need that. Why don't we ever need a federal office to oversee vaccine safety issues? We won't need that. Let's throw that out and not mention it to anybody. You'll recall he also disbanded the Global Health Security Office at the White House in 2018 because that's something Obama made, so it must be terrible. So he got rid of it, and then we got the coronavirus, and then we got it worse than anywhere else on earth. It's one thing to be mad at this president for presiding over what really is the worst botched COVID response of any major nation on earth, one that keeps getting worse over time, right? An epidemic that keeps getting larger and larger and larger, while the president is the one person in the country doing more than anyone else to undermine the things we actually need to do to get it under control, right? Liberate Michigan. Tear off your masks, Idaho. It's one thing to be mad at how terrible he has run, how terribly he has run the federal government when it comes to this disaster. But it is another thing to come to the realization that he really is Johnny Appleseeding this thing all over the country. I mean, he's like a universal donor for this thing. His actual campaign, his personal ego-feeding desire to do large, in-person, unmasked events, even specifically at events reserved just for old people, even in places where the virus is running rampant and the hospitals are full to bursting. That isn't just, callous or tone deaf. That is one of the things that is driving this epidemic into the stratosphere right now, right as we head into the election. He's an epidemiological menace. I mean, in office, sure, but actually in person is what I mean.
EVE Online is a
There is a new study, Dr. Fauci, from Columbia University, and it had a big range, but a horror would be alive if we had had a stronger response to the virus, right? Up to 94% of the people who have died in this country could still be alive if we had done some of the things you just mentioned, national mask mandates. They also cite the insufficient testing response early on and delayed overall response as some of the reasons that they think these deaths could have been prevented. Like I said, it is a stunning study to read. Do you think that that many lives could have been saved by those simple but fundamental things?
You know, Aaron, I don't want to put a number on it because, you know, that's a model study, but I feel quite confident that if we had uniformly done the things that I was talking about just a moment ago, that certainly considerable number of lives could have been saved. You know, remember back when we were having the daily press conferences at the White House, and I was saying when we were talking about opening up the economy and opening up the country again, we had the gateway, the phase 1, the phase 2, the phase 3, and I emphasized that it's not going to be an all or none phenomenon. It's not like turning a light switch on or off. It can't be that you can go from being relatively locked down to just opening up and just not worrying about anything. You've got to do it in a graded fashion, and a graded fashion means you abide by the guidelines, but you do it with some fundamental common denominators. And that's what I refer those 5 things to. They're almost like minimal common denominators that we've got to do. And we've got to do it across the board. We can't be having some not doing it at all and others adhering to it. Otherwise, you know, right, lives likely could have been saved if we had done it that way. But it's not too late. I mean, that's the point I want to make. I don't like we throw up our hands and say, well, this was terrible. We can turn it around. We can.
So we can by doing those things. We know what you're talking about, though, some of your concern about what we're seeing in Europe and whether that could happen here is obviously inconsistent with what the president is saying. I don't need to tell you that, but he did just speak moments ago at a rally, and here's what he said.
We're going to quickly end this pandemic, this horrible plague that came in from China. You look at what's going on, and we're rounding the turn, we're rounding the corner, we're rounding the corner beautifully.
Thanks for checking out GuitarTricks.com recently. For a short time, when you sign up, you'll get an awesome discount on an annual subscription when you use...
Dr. Fauci, do you...
We really are facing a very challenging situation. And if we don't do something in the sense of paying stricter attention to the kinds of public health mitigation issues that we were talking about, it's not going to spontaneously turn around. The good news on the horizon is that vaccines look promising. And hopefully by the time we get to the end of November, the beginning of December, we will have shown that we have at least 1 or 2, and maybe more, but at least 2 vaccines that are safe and effective. That's going to be an important issue. But from the public health standpoint, if you look at the numbers of the daily infections, the upticks on the map of more than 30 states that are having upticks, it's not going to spontaneously turn around unless we do something about it. We don't want to throw our hands up and give up. That's ridiculous to do that. But on the other hand, we don't want to just say that nothing can happen. We have control of this. We can do things that could turn that around.
So I understand, you don't want to wade into politics, but masks are not political, right? They shouldn't be political, right? And we see the president at these rallies and people don't wear masks. And Joe Biden does have a really different plan, right? And today he talked about it, and he specifically talked about making mask wearing mandatory. Here's how he put it.
First,
I'll go to every governor, urge them to mandate mask wearing in their states. And if they refuse, I'll go to the mayors and county executives and get local masking requirements in place nationwide.
He also wants to make masks mandatory, federal buildings, interstate transportation. Do you think this is a good idea? Is this what a president of the United States would be helpful if they were doing, fighting for mask mandates?
Well, you know, one of the issues that people that talk about mandating not be a good idea, because then they'll say they have to enforce it, and there's going to be a difficulty enforcing it. But if everyone agrees that this is something that's important, and they mandate it, and everybody pulls together and say, you know, we're going to mandate it, but let's just do it, I think that would be a great idea, to have everybody do it uniformly. One of the issues, though, I get the argument, say, well, if you mandate a mask, then you're going to have to enforce it, and that'll create more of a problem. Well, if people are not wearing masks, then maybe we should be mandating it.
So in other words, but it sounds like what you're saying is sort of the power of the commons. That you're going to have some people who don't wear them. You only need to have a certain amount. And a mandate could get you there.
Right.
Even if you don't have enforcement, right?
Right.
So,
right, exactly.
Okay, so when you mentioned vaccine, and I know you spent a lot of time on that, and you also spent a lot of time on therapies, a considerable amount of time, right? And the president did just speak about that as well, right? And his own experience recovering from the virus in the debate last night. Let me just play it again.
Когда ты третий, ты понимаешь, что нельзя останавливаться. Ведь ты уже в тройке лидеров.
I can tell you from personal experience that I was in the hospital, I had it, and I got better, and I will tell you that I had something that they gave me, a therapeutic, I guess they would call it. Some people could say it was a cure.
Okay, cure is a really big word, and it's a word that all of us cling on to when we hear it. I know you've talked about that antibody cocktail that he received as possibly being extremely effective in his case. Would you call that, though, a cure?
You know, it's semantics, Erin. It really is. I mean, when you talk about a cure, you're talking about something that if you don't intervene, it's not going to get better by itself. Many of these cases spontaneously recover without any intervention. Mm-hmm. So when we intervene and a person gets better, I would rather say it hastened or improved greatly their recovery. Because cure means that, for example, you have cancer and you give someone chemotherapy, they're cured. If you didn't give them chemotherapy, they would have died. But when you have a situation where someone might ultimately get better anyway, the semantics of saying cure is just, it means different things to different people. I would rather say these therapies are highly effective, if they are, I hope they will be, in essentially making someone improve much, much more rapidly than they normally would.
And is that how is right now the antibody cocktail sort of the most promising thing that you are seeing out there, or are there things in the wings that we're not even yet aware of?
Ладно, понял, сейчас был. Еще идет. Ладно, понял. Getting up better. It's 3 o'clock. Oh, you are miserable. No, I'm not really. But they are really bad. There are some kind of threats. There should be viruses. Yes, that's in someone. Cockroaches, viruses, real. They deserve this. Yes. No, okay, forget it. Everything else is forget it.
Well, you know, the antibody cocktail is really directed specifically against the virus itself. So that something you would want to give more early in the course of infection. We have some good therapies that are for people who have advanced disease. What we really need to do much more of is get therapies that prevent people from getting into the hospital, as opposed to when they're in hospital and very ill, to help them to get out of the hospital. So that's where we're focusing. Monoclonal antibodies, Aaron, are quite promising. The monoclonal antibody that the president received is quite promising. We're in the process right now of doing clinical trials for that antibody and antibodies from other companies to show that they are safe and effective. Yeah. Myself, I'm cautiously optimistic that they are going to be an important tool in our armamentarium of treatment. We were very successful with those type of antibodies with Ebola, and it made a big difference in Ebola. Yeah. I would hope, and I think it might make a big difference here.
One final question, Dr. Fauci. The president, again, last night called you a Democrat to disparage you, and it's not the first time, right? He's been saying it a lot lately, like here.
Лучшее РПГ теперь на ПК. Загружай приложение Plarium Play и приготовься к битве.
I think he's a Democrat, but that's okay.
He's a Democrat. He's actually a very good friend of the Cuomo family.
He's a Democrat. Everybody knows that.
You made it clear, obviously, you're not registered to either party. And as I've said on the show, it's irrelevant what you are. It's not relevant to what you do. But he keeps saying this to disparage you, to kind of bring your reputation down among people to whom that would seem to be a negative. Do you think he's trying to get you to quit?
I don't think so, Aaron. I don't pay attention to that kind of thing, and I have the ability that I've had for a long time to just focus like a laser on what I need to do. And my job, through vaccines, through therapies, and through by public health measures, is to safeguard the health, the safety, and the welfare of the American public. That's all I concentrate on. These other kind of things, though people may find it difficult to believe, are mere distractions. They don't bother me. I know what my job is, and I've got to do it, and I'm going to do it. So that kind of whatever you want to call it is, to me, it's noise.
Coronavirus is battering the upper Midwest. 5 states in that region now lead the nation in new cases. In Wisconsin alone, the positivity rate is upwards of 20%. This surge comes 5 months after my next guest warned Congress that the government was making dangerous decisions about the pandemic. Last spring, former BARDA vaccine director Rick Bright
Now, Dr. John LaPook on assignment for 60 Minutes.
This weekend, Americans face another surge in the COVID-19 pandemic. Infections have passed the 8 million mark and are rising rapidly. There are more than 218,000 dead. During the course of the pandemic,
Горячая штучка уже хакнула систему предложения. Горячая штучка уже хакнула систему, предложила пельмени, которые не нужно варить, только 2 минуты времени СВЧ, все готово. Ребята, угощайтесь, я пошел. Переходи по ссылке и попробуй прямо сейчас.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another episode of Introducing, and today I am very excited.
Что такое смыла? Еще ешь, что ли? Не популярно. Не популярно. Так, так, чек. Сколько можно чекать? Check mail. There's nothing on the mail. Нет, какая нафиг разница? Да, это просто не знаю, зачем. Сам. Ну, вполне. Ну, вполне стремительность кандидата. ну да, сидишь дома как-то. Ну да. Ну, кушать потом придется. Ну, вот это вот. Пасту, кость, пасту, Ты же часто играешь. Я послушал полностью концерты. Ты не помнишь, я кушал что-то еще тогда? Я не помню. Что общался с тобой, да? Привык. Рекламу общался. Компетенция. Ну чё? Ничего. Что это такое? Ты что это? Нет. Ну, это обновляется как будто квази-обновление. Это способ. Ничего ты? Ты чё это? Ты что там не будешь? Да ты чё это, сволочь? Опять писать письма, что ты письма каким еще весим, блин? Все. Ладно, супер жоп. Супер жоп. Жопик. Mushroom.